from the show, right from the website, or you can get it on an app that is for podcasts.
Dustin, is it okay that we record this?
Yeah, sure.
Great. Thank you.
So that's probably about enough about me, because you're probably thinking, when is he going to look at our photos? So I'll stop sharing my screen here, and then I'll reshare and pull up Bridge here. I personally, I don't use Lightroom. I use it on my phone. It's a really nice app on your phone. But when I'm on my computer, I use Photoshop. That's just the way I learned when I was in school. I took digital photography when I was in college. And Photoshop and Lightroom, same company, Adobe, they also make this program we're looking at here. Is called Bridge. And they're all bundled in together when you buy them. I use Bridge to organize my photos and to look at my pictures. And then when I want to do the editing, then I open them up in Photoshop. So first, let's take just a look at what photos you all sent in, and then I'll pull them up one by one and take a look through them there. We have our two categories. So this is our nature category. And then we also have our Nature Plus category. Not as many pictures in that one. So we have a nice mix here of all different kinds of pictures. Go back to the nature one. And before I jump in, just some general observations and kind of what's going through my head as I'm looking through these. So as I go through them, I will be thinking about the regular parts of how to take a photo and compose a photo. So I'm thinking about exposure, lighting, color, composition, all of that kind of stuff. I'm also going to think a little bit about the story that you're telling in your photo. And for some of them, I'll pull in some conservation ideas. And I think when we get towards the end of it, that's more when I would talk a little bit more about conservation in terms of pictures. One thing I'll say that's tough about a critique when you're trying to add conservation in is that it's only one photo at a time. And when you're trying to put your photos to work for some conservation project to support a nature center or whatever it is, usually you use more than one picture. So that's a big thing, and having captions, having text with your photos too. So you can only do so much with one picture and no captions. So that would be the big thing of a lot of conservation photography is not the photo, it's how you present the photo, what you do with the picture afterwards. How do you talk about it? How do you share it? That kind of thing. And then having multiple photos so you're telling a story with the pictures. And I would definitely put that to you as a challenge. Maybe even you would do it for one of your meetings and say, instead of sending one photo, send 3 to 5 pictures and tell a story with those 3 to 5 pictures. And when you're doing that, you would want to have some shots that zoom in and tell you who your main character is, who's the hero of the story. That's mostly what we have in these pictures because there's only one picture. So you want to get in there and show that iguana, you want to show that bird, get up close to it. But then when you think, oh, I've got 3 to 5 pictures, now you've got to say, well, what's the setting? How does this bird live? What else is happening around it? And then maybe bring in some of the human elements too. Are there threats to this species? Is there some pollution happening or some negative part of the story? Have some drama in there too. And is there a general takeaway for the audience about how the species is doing and what further needs to be done to help it? Or maybe it's just celebrating a park that's doing a great job. Maybe it's just celebrating Jonathan Dickinson State Park, but still trying to tell the story of why that's a special place. Okay, so I'm going to stop sharing and then reshare into Photoshop. So we can look at these one at a time here. And I'm just going to take a couple minutes on each one. And then after that, we can have 20 minutes or so to do questions, or people can jump and talk about their photos a little bit. It's funny, this is the first one that popped up here because this is the one I was not expecting. It's like thinking of the Audubon Photo Club. It's like, oh, what? And then this is called Glacier Pool, Iceland.
Wow.
And I was showing the photos to my wife earlier, who's a bird biologist, used to work with Cicada woodpeckers. And she's like, oh man, it's hard to compete with, like, you know, mountains and stuff. I think that this is a good example of what to do with where to place your horizon lines. And this is placed at about, this is kind of using the rule of thirds, where you don't put your horizon line right through the exact center, put a little higher or put it a little bit lower. So this does a nice job with that. The other thing going on in this that is helpful for the viewer is there's something happening in the foreground. When you think of a big view with mountains and stuff, you might just think of it as one solid view of just beautiful mountains. But in this photo, we have something that water in the front is our welcome to this picture, pulls us in, gives us something to happen in the foreground, and then pulls us into the rest of the scene.
One other thing I forgot to mention is that if anybody has a question that they want to ask, please put it in the chat. And if it's specific to what Dustin is talking about, I'll kind of interrupt him. And if not, we'll save those questions for the end. Okay.
This grackle here, there's something happening in this photo that was also a nice surprise to me, which is that you know, the focus is nice and crisp on the face and the beak, but the photographer is getting creative and, I don't know, dare I say risky here, playing with having parts of this blurred. And I really like that. It works because we still have a subject. We know exactly what this photo is about. It's a simple photo in that there's not a lot happening in it. I don't mean simple in a negative way. I just mean there's not a lot happening in it. We know exactly what the story is here. Looks like this bird is in a bath or something like that, a little fountain or something, or it's just in the rain. I don't know. But the real soft focus on the rest of the picture, the little splashes, that whole bottom right hand corner where there was something that was in front of between the lens and the bird, so it came out of focus. I think it adds a lot to the picture because it tells a little story. It gives your brain it's a little fun kind of thing, because we're not expecting to see blurriness. Okay, trying to keep this down to 2 or 3 minutes per per picture. So let's keep moving. Oh, this one is called Raindrops Keep Falling on My Head. Okay, so this is in the right. I should have read the title first, and then I would have known. All right, let's see what the title is on this one. Sandhill Crane. What I noticed about this, and I've photographed sandhill cranes, and this photo is better than any of the photos I've ever taken of a sandhill crane. I think for a couple of reasons. It is, you know, it's a big bird. Even me, who I don't have a big long lens, so I can't do much bird photography. But if I have a sandhill crane there, I'm going to start taking pictures. Most of my photos, a sandhill crane is just kind of wandering, walking around. So I like that feels like we caught an intimate moment. It's a bird that is around people a lot. And so normally they are just kind of walking around, you know, they're used to people. But even though it's a bird that is exposed to people a lot and like we see them a lot, in this one, it feels like we found a private moment that this bird was having. And part of that is the fact that it's part of its bill is hidden. It's having a little moment with itself, preening itself. But also the lighting is helping. This is very soft image. If this had really sharp, if the light was like really, bright spots and dark shadows, this would have a little bit of a different story to it. Moving on. This one is peering through the palms. And I think that this photographer was trying to do something that's hard to do, which is to put something in front of, like photographing through a gate or a window or something like that, photographing through the palms. And that's a pretty tough thing to do. And because the question is, well, what's the subject here? Is it what's in the background? What's in the foreground? I think in this case, I would have liked the part in the front to be a little more out of focus. It is a little bit, but I would have liked that to be a little bit more out of focus. So my brain knows just what the story is. The title is good because it tells us where we're going in here. And it's a nice moment to catch in photographing butterflies. I am never successful at it because they fly away the second I get close. So we caught this scene. That's nice. And I like the challenge of trying to decide where do we put these palm fronds in the picture. And I don't know if what I would have done differently in this one. Maybe put the moth like a little bit more in the center, perhaps, because it is a photo with a lot going on. She'll let me know that it's happening right there. I don't know. But yeah, fun challenge there, and nice moment with the moth. This one I had to do a double take because I was like, oh wait, no, that's an anhinga in the background. And it reminded me of a painting. So gosh, there's a phrase that I can't remember from like the early 1900s in photography that the decisive moment. I don't know if you've ever heard that, but the decisive moment was some famous photographer a long time ago. Okay, use that. And the whole idea is that when you have your camera, he photographed people, but when you have your camera, there's these moments happening around you, kind of the chaos of the world swirling around you. But if you're watching, you can capture the perfect moment when all of the blobs that are the people and the objects and all the shapes and all the lines, the color, the perfect moment when they all just are right where they're supposed to be. So that's what I thought about when I saw this, that the anhinga in the top is in a great spot. They almost, because it looks like the other bird is like watching it. And composition wise, without the other bird in the top, you'd have a bunch of sky and there's nothing really happening in the sky. That can be good, that can be bad, but sometimes you can have too much sky. There's nothing going on up there. It's the perfect size too to just engage that part of the composition, but it also interacts with the other things that are happening in this picture. And I love these little guys. I usually see them from up above a little bit because I see them when I do ranch tours and I'm up on a buggy looking down on them. So it's kind of fun, and I was wondering if the person, like how high up this eastern meadowlark is, if the person got low to shoot it or if it just happened to be up on a tall branch. And the title for this one is Eastern Meadowlark. This is definitely a photo that has the subject, like it's really clear what this is a picture of. I think that the image might be a little bit dark. That would be my critique on this one. And I'm gonna pull up my levels here. And if we just take our middle tone and move it a little bit. I mean, the problem is that that yellow looks so beautiful when you can when the exposure is a little bit lower. So maybe this is right. Maybe I would just pop up the brights a little bit there. And yeah, but I do like that we know exactly what this picture is. From a conservation photo standpoint, this would be good if you wanted to say, like, here's our bird, here's the character in our story. But I would also say, think about where this is, because I don't see anything that tells me if this is in Florida or in some other place, or is it in a prairie? Because when I think about eastern meadowlarks, I think about how prairie birds are declining across the country. So something to think about when you're taking some of these pictures is it's a tough balance sometimes, because having a blurred background is fantastic. But then at the same time, you don't know the context. So I'm not saying there's a right or wrong way to do it, but sometimes having more photos helps with that. Oh yeah, this was like I saw this. This is called it's called Peacock in Your Face. So that's a good title. That's a good title for this. I don't generally have titles for my pictures because they're usually just people's names, or I have a caption. If it's a scientist at work, I'm having a caption about it, or if it's a bird or something like that. It's still I still don't really have titles. I have captions of, like, this Florida scrub jay is blah 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 blah. But I like the title on this one, Peacock in Your Face. This is one that when I saw it, I thought, yes, this needs to be in color. And if we turn it to black and white, actually, I hadn't actually tried that. It's not, that's pretty good. I'm surprised because I didn't think it would work in black and white. But there is enough happening in this picture, shapes and lines and stuff, that it does look good black and white. This is one where it's almost an abstract painting. There's a lot going on, and if you could almost stare at it and let your eyes go blurry and just, like, absorb the experience and have, like, a psychedelic moment on this picture. Yeah, it's pretty fun. I don't know what I would do different. It's well cropped. This photo knows exactly what it wants to be. It's thinking about the edges, filling the whole frame with the bird, which in this case works really well. This is a case where you definitely don't need to know where it is. This is not about the ecology this bird is inside of. This is about the statement this bird is making. This is black-bellied whistling ducks swimming. And we have this wonderful reflection happening in the water here. This is one where when I was looking at it, I was trying to figure out if I thought that it should be a little brighter or not as well. Let's pull it up and see. I think it's good. I think actually the photographer got this right, and don't listen to me because that didn't work. Yeah, so I do like the lighting in this, and the background, the darks, the greens, the browns, all works together. I used to always just do black and white photography, and there's still a part of me that really likes that. And so when I do see color, I really do like photos that almost seem black and white because they play with a limited color palette. And the same colors that are in these birds are what's reflected all around them too. So I like that. And the reflections are really fun here too. Oh yeah, this is Willets. And we've got some light on this wet sand, doing some cool things here. And the water is kind of frozen in time. So we're seeing a lot of details on the water here. I'm not sure what I would change on this one. Could play with cropping it, but this actually, I think this is a pretty good crop because we see the birds, but I think I like it the way that it was before I cropped it. And the reason why, hold on, let me just go back a sec. The reason why is it tells a little bit more of a story. I know that there is a inclination to want to get close, zoom in. But sometimes it's nice to leave a little space and let there be a little bit of a story of where the birds are and what they're doing. So I like that about this piece. One thing that I was wondering about, but then I realized it'd be pretty tough to do because these move around. I was thinking about the exposure length and how it would be fun if the water had a longer exposure on it so you could see it like misting and being like, you know, all fun all around them. The problem is you would need to do 2 exposures to do that because these birds are always walking all around. That would be a fun challenge. If you had a tripod, you could do this. You got your tripod out there, you get your shot of the birds walking, and then they walk past and you change your time, your exposure time. And instead of a fraction of a second, you set it to 5 seconds. And take the same shot and let the water like this. And then on Lightroom or Photoshop, you stick the birds back in there. Of course, you would not lie about it. You need to, you know, be honest in what you did. But that would be a really cool fine art piece.
Wouldn't you, Dustin, have to use a filter to cut back on the light in order to do a long exposure like that?
Well, you can use neutral density filters to do that.
Yeah.
Or you can play with the other parts of your settings. So you can play with your ISO and your aperture. You know, if you turn your ISO down low to like 100, maybe if this was a bright day, you had it up. You know, I don't know, or yeah, So turn it down as much as you can to get a longer exposure, and then also put your aperture as small as, you know, a 16 or 22 or something. That might help. That might not get you to 5 seconds, but a neutral density filter will do that. Stick that on there and that'll give you automatically however many stops it is. When you buy them, they'll tell you how many stops it is. And if you've never played around with the manual features on your phone or on your cameras, I really recommend it. That I always, you know, unless I'm photographing like an event, like wedding or something, I'm using manual features on mine. And yes, it takes a little bit of time because you've got to get your light, you've got to check it, and if the light's changing, you've got to readjust. But generally, like if you were out in a place like this, you could get that. You could get your levels, get it all set, and you'd be good for a little while, and you wouldn't have to worry about it. But that way, you could choose: do I want to have a fast exposure or slow exposure? Like you could make those choices. Generally, if you have something moving, you want it to be higher, you know, 250 50th of a second or higher if something is kind of just moving slowly. And maybe if it's a bird, you're getting, I don't know what you guys shoot birds at, 1,000th of a second or whatever when they're flying. We have ducklings. These are so cute. I was very curious about what got cropped because I could tell this was cropped because the shape is not the standard shape ratio here. And I definitely crop my pictures. And sometimes that that ratio is important to keep that the same. Other times it doesn't matter. You are responsible for your edges. And this photographer was thinking, oh, there's something that's distracting up at the top or whatever, I'm going to cut it out because I'm responsible for those edges and I want to tell my story. And those are telling a different story, or it's throwing the eye up there. I want the story to be about how cute these little ducklings are. So personally, I think don't be afraid to crop. Though I will say when you veer away from the standard aspect ratio, it will be noticeable. I noticed immediately that this was cropped. So you might want to set up your crop tool to be a standard, more standard size, 11 by 14 or whatever. I always do 24 by 36 is what I do for mine. And when I print, sometimes I print 24 by 36. So yeah, but these are super cute. And yeah, good job thinking about all of your edges. This, I think, gets the lighting award. It looks like this iguana was brought into a studio and photographed. It's like modeling, for a fashion magazine or something. Look at the expression on the face here. This looks like a portrait. It's an animal with personality. I get a kick out of this one. And here is a trick that some of you may or may not know. When I'm looking at this photo, I'm not assuming that it was taken at night. It's dark in the background. That does not mean it was taken at night. What it means is that there was a difference in how bright the light was on the iguana and how bright the light was behind the iguana. This could have been taken in the middle of the day, but the photographer chose to expose for the light on the face and let the other stuff go dark. Now, maybe the photographer will jump in later and tell us whether it was photographed during the day or night, or maybe they even put a light on this animal. This is called Portrait of an Invasive Iguana. But when you're photographing, and this happens a lot with nature photographs, especially like say you're photographing a duck or something out there, and you see that there's a bright spot on the face, and then you take your picture, and then afterwards you're like, oh, the pond looks really good, the water looks really good, but the face looked too bright. And if you're photographing on auto mode, there's nothing you can do about that, except for try to fix it later in Photoshop. But if you've burned out those highlights, they're gone. Can't bring them back. The other option is to do a little bit of a shorter exposure and choose that you want the bright spot to be, say, your medium lightness. So if it was a black and white photo, it would be gray, not white or black. And when you do that, those other areas are going to look significantly darker. This is something that back in the film days was much more of a choice people made every time, because when you were outside, the sky is really bright, the ground is dark, and you could either photograph the sky or the ground, but not really both. Because if you photograph the beautiful clouds, the ground just looked black, they looked dark. If you photograph the ground, the sky just looked white. So that's why people would buy filters that would be darker for the top half. So cool, yeah, cool little lesson here. We've got bird in flight here. Great blue heron in flight is the title of this one. And nice job stopping the motion here. And yeah, I'm curious what the settings were on this, but fast enough. And this looks like a nice bright day, so we're able to get a fast shutter speed and grab the action here. The bird looks great. I like this silhouette a lot. Now in this photo, and the background is relatively out of focus. In this photo, I do find the background a little bit distracting. I like that it's out of focus, but there's still a lot happening. There's like a lot of branches and kind of brambles going on. So I find that there is a tension. I want to look at this gorgeous bird in flight, but my eye definitely keeps bouncing back and forth to the background, to the bird, background to the bird. Now, if I was standing there next to you, I would take the exact same photo if I was lucky and got this good photo. What are you going to do? That's what the background looks like. And that's probably what you're thinking. But there is nothing. That's what was there. That's what you got in the background. But maybe this is also a lesson in just going out over and over and over again and taking thousands of photos of great blue herons in flight. And then you're hoping that out of those thousands, there's one where the background doesn't compete with the bird in the front. Okay, that's all in the nature section. So let me pull up the nature pluses. Okay, nature pluses. This one is old friends. And this is a picture that the second you see it, like you just go, "Aw." And if you don't, what's wrong with you? I noticed quickly that this is cropped also. It looks like this would be good for Instagram. We've got the square crop. And I don't know how many of you are Instagram users, but it's kind of interesting. This really popular app has all these people thinking in squares, and nobody's thought in squares since the Renaissance or something. So I think that's fun to think in squares. It's a whole different composition. I like the lines in here. There's a really beautiful story happening. What I would suggest for this one is to do something like maybe get low, do something that shows that the photo was kind of considered, whereas this is taken at head height, looks like. You know, this is happening in front of you. It's a beautiful moment. Click. But what about if you dropped down to the ground and photographed this, or moved way off over the side, took the picture? So I'd be curious to see what kind of other story would happen, or just a photo that would strike our brains because we're seeing it at a different kind of angle or something. We've got peacock, hen, and chick. And there's some really great clarity on this one. The head, I'm going to zoom in. The sharpness on the face here is really great. And we've also got her baby with her too, her chick with her, which is super cute. Zoom in there so you can see how cute this one is. The head here is nicely lit. I feel like I go back and forth on this one with the lighting, and I think it's because the lighting on the two birds is really nice, but I find that similar to the other one I mentioned where the background was clashing a little bit. And again, you know, it's not like I'm saying you should just go into Photoshop and change this. It's walking in the grass. So that's what the grass looks like. But just from a purely pretending it was a painting or something, I do think that the brightness and greenness on that grass clashes a little bit with what's happening with the really soft light, and the colors. Like this is a bird that has some beautiful colors on her chest, but it's more of a subtle gradation going into the grays, and so then that green kind of and brightness pulls me out of it. Let's do this one black and white. Now I know you're thinking, why did they bring this guy on here that's going to take a picture of a peacock and make it black and white? I think that in some ways I like this better because now the background isn't bothering me. But we did lose the beautiful subtle colors that were happening there. Those beautiful subtle colors happening. So that's a tough one, but a nice scene captured there. This is semi-palmated plover with green algae. And, I'm not a coast person, so I'm not sure if this is just happy green algae or if this is bad green algae. I don't know. You could put it in the chat. So I'm definitely like the conservation photography and me is like, oh, is this a photo about algae, like problem algae that's toxic, or is this just normal? I just don't know enough about it. So having that caption would be important when you go to share this on Facebook or whatever, letting the people know. And in conservation photography, sometimes you are showing ugly things, but in a beautiful way. And that's, in early photography, that wasn't the case. Everything had to look like a painting. It had to look like a pretty soft painting. But now we don't have to do that anymore. And it's good to have stories that show ugly things too, but they can be photographed in a beautiful way. I like the composition here. It's a nice setup, nice silhouette on the bird, nice shape of the bird. Nothing distracting happening in here. I feel like I've been to this place. Maybe you all feel like that too, especially since you're birders. You've probably been to many places just like this. This is called Rainbows Over the Glades. I went with a few birding friends a few years ago because there was a groove-billed Ani hanging out by you guys down there, and we drove 3 hours or whatever, and found it, and we went to it looked just like this. There's probably a million places that look like this, but do any of you, I don't know if you remember when the groove-billed Ani was around. If you went and saw it, you could put it in the chat. I definitely am a sucker for rainbows, and this has a sunset and a rainbow with almost a double rainbow. So I think that's a lot of fun. But besides the rainbows in there and the pretty light, I like that this is showing a little bit of a story about land use, where we can see the edge of this field here. I assume that's sugar field, right? End of the sugar field, with then these bushes on the side, and probably there's a ditch there. So I like that, and it's just kind of a fun composition. I'm sorry, I don't really have anything too helpful to say on this one. Yeah, sometimes when you're looking at the sky, you want to have clouds all over doing fun things, but they also can be distracting. And actually, one of the things I like about this is it doesn't have too much cloud action. It's got some clouds on the bottom, and we can see the sun's rays from the setting sun, some lighting up those clouds in the bottom right. That's nice, but the rest of the sky is letting the rainbow go to work. It's not clashing with the rainbow. Oh my goodness, is this our last picture? This one is woman on a beach. And this reminds me a lot of the moth picture. Maybe it's the same photographer, I don't know. Reminds me a lot of the moth picture with the looking through to a scene. And when I see pictures like that, I think about the psychology of it. With a moth, it's more like, ooh, looks like a secret garden. We're gonna find the moth. And this one, I'm like, oh, are we spying on the person? Is there like is there a quiet moment happening that we want to give them their space and be respectful and stay away, or are we like, checking out what's going on down there? I like there's the rule of thirds happening here with the horizon in the back. There are things happening in the foreground to pull us in. The title tells us what's happening here. the placement in the frame of the person works kind of in terms of rules of thirds and stuff, but I almost would like the person maybe on the other side, and wondering if it should be we're looking through, like, discovering a person but we're hiding, or should it be off to the other side where they're not hiding and those grasses just become an element, a composition element. So yeah, you all you give me these pictures where you're looking through things and it gets me all into the psychological parts of it, and you probably weren't thinking about that at all. I do have some different little chats, direct messages. People are asking me things like, should we crop this, try different things? Certainly give it a try. If we were to, let's say if we were going to do it as about a square, and then the whole thing is looking through that. Hold it down. That way. I said I wanted it on the left side, on the person on the left side. Yeah, I'm not sure what I would do with this. But I could see cropping out some of the left here. And the reason is because there isn't another figure over here. There isn't an element to activate that side of the picture. I know the person's walking that direction, but this might be a stronger crop, because if there's nothing, if there's not a person or something here in this other left side, I'm wondering what is that side doing for the picture. So don't be afraid to crop in. And please, these are just my thoughts looking at it. So with some photos, I'm just like, hey, the lighting is great, and then other ones I tell you how to change things. So, please don't take that like I'm saying there's anything wrong. It's just my ideas and things to try. Okay. Oh yeah, that's our last one. I'm gonna stop sharing, and then I will share again and pull up Bridge again here, so we can just take a quick overview of all our pictures. So here's our Nature Plus pictures. Here's our nature pictures. Nice. Thinking about the conservation angle on this, I guess I kind of said this earlier when I was saying, take multiple pictures. Generally, what we have in almost all of these is our close-ups, showing, one animal or a group of animals. Some of them are also giving us some environment. Like these willets, we're seeing them walking on the beach, tells us a little bit where they live. Some of them have some background in there. On some of them, I complained that I thought the background was clashing, but then I'm also telling you sometimes you want to put a background in there. So hopefully I'm not confusing you. Hopefully I'm not confusing you too much. Some intimate moments, all kinds of fun stuff were happening in here. I really had fun looking through these, some really fun pictures. Like I said, with some of these, I photographed some of the same subjects and have not done as good a job as you have in this class or in this club. Yeah, really fun. Okay, I'll stop sharing, and if you want to put your cameras back on, you're welcome to. And I can take questions or however you normally do this last part. I don't know if Nancy, if you kind of like MC this part or how we do it.
I'm back. I did notice a lot of people were just making comments about how much they were enjoying the pictures. So there really wasn't any questions that I noticed.
Oh, I do have a question in direct chat. At what point do these become art versus just photos? Oh, well, I have got all the answers. I am going to tell you the secrets. What a good question. There's not an answer to that. For myself, I think the consciousness is a part of that. Like, did you just see something that moved you and just held up the camera and clicked? That could make a beautiful picture for sure. And maybe it would even hang in a place and they would say this is art. You don't always know just by looking at the picture. But I think the intentionality to me is what makes an artist. So maybe for me, it's more about, are you an artist or not, as opposed to, is it art or not? So the artist is turning their brain on when they're taking the pictures and training themselves too. So you've got that muscle memory, just like in anything else, and you've looked through thousands and thousands of pictures. You've worked on the types of stories you want to tell, the lighting that interests you, and you have your vision, your statement about the world as you see it, and that vision is in every photo that you take or every series that you take. There's my story. There's my novel I just wrote, my poem I just wrote about life in that picture. And you can only do that if you are aware of all of the tools that you have and you're conscious about how you're using them all. Could you, they say, like, if you give monkeys some typewriters and enough time, they'll recreate Shakespeare. Maybe that would happen. And in photo, that's a little easier to do because the camera will do so much work for you. But I think the artist is someone who is thinking about that. Now, for a conservation photographer, they're doing that, but there's also a little bit of another direction happening too, which is the science component and an understanding of the conservation story as well. So a lot of the conservation people really are environmental educators. And a lot of the professional ones actually were scientists before they became photographers. So one photographer might be sent out by a magazine to photograph a bird, and they're not really a conservation photographer, but they're a wildlife photographer. And they go out, they get a great shot of that bird. The other photographer is a conservation photographer. They send that person out there to get their picture of the bird. But before they go, they're reading up research published on that bird. Maybe they're calling a biologist or two, asking questions about what's happening with that bird. And when they go to take that picture, it's not just, is the lighting good today, but what is happening in the life of this bird? Okay, I'm photographing it in April. How is that different than if I photographed it another time? Is there a relationship the bird has to the season or to a plant or a bug or a bird or whatever that I want to put in that story? So the conservation photographer is telling a story about the interconnections in nature, and then also can be like showing negative things. Like if you see pictures of elephants where their tusks, they've been killed for their tusks or that kind of thing, showing terrible, ugly things. That's that can be conservation photography too. There's a quote, and I'm forgetting which photographer had it. It's something like, wildlife photography is when you show a beautiful butterfly on a flower. Conservation photography is the same scene, but you see the bulldozer behind it coming toward it. So I thought that was a pretty cool quote. So hopefully I've now answered for everyone for all of time. What is art versus photography? I consider myself an artist. I say photographer, but in my head I'm saying artist. And a lot of photographers don't. A lot of people just think of photography as photography and not art. Maybe it's because I came from an art background. I studied painting and photography. I have a fine art degree. I took a lot of art history classes. So I'm thinking of the photos in context of art history when I'm taking them. And when I talk to some professional photographers too, they don't have art backgrounds and they might not even think of themselves as artists, even though they're amazing and do amazing work. Okay. Any other thoughts or questions? I do see another one here. Would you make the background darker in Lightroom?
Jesus, where are you seeing these?
I have private ones coming to me. People
Oh, I
want to
was
be
gonna say,
anonymous.
because I'm not seeing any of these.
I'm just making them up.
Okay, that'll work too.
No, I do have them. I think that was for the picture of the was it the peacock with the green background? Is that one? I think so. No, it wasn't. I don't
The
remember what one it was.
peahen.
The peahen, it wasn't that one. So I guess the question is more generally though about photoshopping and or lightrooming, whatever word you want to use. It is totally fine to play around with your photos, but it depends on where you're going to share them and how. You cannot do all that playing around and then pretend that you didn't. So when you're doing, if it's going to be in a magazine or a gallery or whatever it is, or a competition, the competitions will have rules about that kind of stuff. Are you making kind of like a fine art, digital art piece, or is it your photo? Not that photography isn't fine art, as we just talked about, but there's a difference there, and it's all about truth in advertising. So you can, in Photoshop and Lightroom, do all kinds of stuff. And if you were making a movie poster or whatever it was, you would totally play with it and do that. But then I kind of think of that as digital art. And I don't know if I would call it a photograph. In my own work, I always process them in Photoshop, playing with contrast and brightness and all that stuff. And I'll touch up different parts of the photo to dodge and burn, just like I used to do in the darkroom back in the day. Occasionally, if there's like a branch hanging in the corner that's like really distracting me, I will get rid of it and just erase it out of there. But besides things like that, I don't play with my portraits. It's like Holly's comment there. Yeah, multiple shots. Give it a try. 3 to 5 shots. That website I mentioned, Jamie Heimbach, she has for free. You can download on that site a PDF, and it's her like, these are the 5 shots you need in every story. And so I recommend going to her website, downloading that. You have to give her your email, so you start getting emails. But and it's a helpful. It's like, have your establishing shot, set the scene, have your main character that's probably going to be a wildlife, bird or something. And so I think it's 5 or 6 shots to tell your story. Okay. I won't name you, but the iguana photographer has spoken in the direct messages, and that makes me happy because I was right. It was a daytime shot, and then there was deep shade around it, and the photographer played into that, exaggerated that shade a little bit. That makes me happy. Another project you could do is try to all fool each other and take pictures at night that look like the day, and in the day that look like the night. See who can figure out when the photos were taken. I'm not getting any more questions coming through. Nancy or Mary, did you have any other things for me, or did you have anything else on this schedule?
No, the question and answer was good. Unless you have any pictures that you would like to share with us that you thought were really excellent conservation pictures, that would be lovely. Otherwise,
Out of the ones that we just looked at, you mean?
no, yours specific, your
Oh,
photo.
oh, gotcha. No, that, I mean, yeah, go to my website, check out some of my stuff, go to my Facebook page or my Instagram.
Okay.
And yeah, I don't know if any of you have Birding Magazine, but that was just a couple months ago. I was really proud of that article about Cara. I've only been published in magazines a couple of times, so that was really exciting. It was somebody from the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service wanted to do a story, something that related to what U.S. Fish was doing in Florida, and somehow I got on the email chain, and I was like, "Ooh, me! How about this? How about this?" And so that was really fun because that wasn't at Archbold. That wasn't in my normal haunts. And I got to go down toward where the heck was the name of the place? It's down toward like Clewiston, like, it's west of Okeechobee, on an area that they're doing different like water restoration stuff. It's like a big multi-year project for water retention, which is a good thing, but they're going to be displacing a bunch of Cara at the same time.
Oh,
And so it's this interesting dynamic where options are limited, and it's like you got to choose the best of your bad options when you have 21 million people in the state, and 1,000 more or something like that coming every day. So we've got water quality issues. We need water retention. We need that kind of stuff. Where are you going to put it? You're going to flood a town? Okay, no, we'll go out to that natural area and do it there. Okay, well, yeah, but now there's Cara that live out there. So, I think it's part of the conservation is complicated. And if you're trying to tell a story about conservation, it's okay that it's complicated. I don't think you need to pretend that it isn't. Invasive species are complicated. Down by you've got Everglades snail kites, and they are coming back from the brink of extinction because of an invasive snail. So that's an amazing story. So yeah, it's complicated stuff. Yeah, that was a cool project. I was really proud of that Cara story.
so how many birds do they have to relocate?
As far as I know, they weren't really relocating them because the property, they were only turning a certain section of it into a water retention area. So I don't know the numbers, how many thousands of acres we're talking here, but what they were doing was tagging the Cara so that they could see what the impact would be. So they weren't going to just move them, but it's like, okay, we're going to flood this big area. We know there's Cara here. We're going to bring in Joan Morrison there to do her magic and capture these, and then we'll see what happens over the next 10 years. So yeah, complicated stuff.
You had a question about that bird with the green algae, and that was a good point, saying to name it toxic green algae, because that's what it was.
Oh, it was. Okay, yeah.
It was when we had that big, huge outbreak of green algae a couple of years ago.
Yeah.
And actually, I was on a farm out in western Palm Beach County, and in I guess the little canals that they run through the farmland, it had green algae in it, which it didn't occur to me that it could get that far away from the source, unless that was some of the source, but I don't know. But it was hard watching these birds feeding in this area with the green algae.
Yeah. Well, one of the things with photos, when I was mentioning with that, it was like, oh, I don't know, is this okay algae or bad algae?
Yeah.
You can't assume that unless it's like a bird covered in tar, right, and oil. We can't assume that the viewer is going to know what's going on. So needing those captions Or maybe there even be sometimes a shot where maybe there's a sign that says water not safe. That's somewhere in the background there. You try to get into the photo too. Because something can look totally beautiful. And I get this as an environmental educator. People who drive down the roads, they see all these green areas and they go, wow, look at all this nature. And then when I go down it, I'm just thinking, look at all those invasive species. All I see is Melaleuca, Brazilian pepper, right? So everybody has their different experience of when they come to the photos.
So you've got a lot of compliments here about how much people enjoyed your talk tonight. I don't know whether you read them yet.
Yeah, and I've got some private messages too saying thank you too. I appreciate that.
Right.
This was a new thing for me. I've one-on-one looked at people's photos. I've never really done this. So that was hopefully that was helpful for all of you. It's scary to give critiques and worry if you're going to hurt someone's feelings. After a while, I just kind of got absorbed into it and was really having a lot of fun. So hopefully you were having fun too.
I think so. People stuck it out. Nobody left that I can tell. So I think people enjoyed it and hopefully they got a lot out of it. And it was really nice that you bridged it to conservation, because I think a lot of our members do think that way as well. They love photography, they love nature, but we're also all concerned. So it's nice to have us think about the conservation aspect when we're shooting pictures as well. So thank you, Dustin. It was wonderful. We really appreciated your evening tonight. And hopefully we'll have you back again next year,
Wonderful. Maybe. Yeah, I would love that. Yeah, have a wonderful night, everybody. Bye.
Thank you. Good night, everybody. If anybody has any questions before we shut down. If not, I'm gonna turn off the recording and say goodbye.